Join us by the fireside for our evening stories of true life strange encounters with mysterious visitors from worlds and other realities deep within our own universe and beyond.
An amazing, unexplained experience. So, my experience occurred in the summer of 2009. That whole evening has stuck with me very well over the years. I was hanging out with four other people at my best friend's apartment. We had just finished spending the evening on the lake, and we were just hanging out and listening to some music. I remember it was around 10 p.m. maybe, and my best friend had just bought the game Explosion Man for 360, and he was showing us what the game actually was. All of a sudden, I had the strongest urge or need to go outside. It's hard to explain how strong and gripping this sense was. So, without saying anything, I just got up and went out the front door and walked down into the parking lot. I don't recall ever seeing anything that stood out as strange, but the next thing I know, I had this overwhelming sensation that I was falling. Within this feeling of falling, I also experienced what could best be described as having a sensory overload, maybe. I can't really explain what the actual experience was, but the best way to describe it is that I was learning about the nature of the universe and the significance of the soul. And this was all being kind of imparted to me. Basically, I was being taken on some kind of intergalactic voyage, but was being shown multiple things at the same time. Imagine that you're watching a film, for example, where every other frame is from one movie while the other frames are from a different movie. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what it was like. It felt like I was experiencing two different things at the same time, like they were blended so well I couldn't really distinguish between the two at times. What I felt, I learned was that life is never truly ending, and the most important thing is your soul, read as consciousness. Basically, the higher the frequency your consciousness resonates, the better for you as soul in the next life. And the lower the frequency, the worse for soul. I was never under the impression this was like heaven, hell, or anything like that, but more like it was what you will do once you have passed from this life and more onto the next life. Basically, you are soul that is taking physical form to experience this thing called life down here. And you have done it multiple times and will do it multiple times if necessary. There was a lot more to it, but it's kind of hard to explain. And in a way, it was just too much information to take in and for me to remember. Anyways, around midnight, my friends had tried calling my cell phone because they had thought I just left without saying goodbye to anyone. When I didn't answer, they went to see if my car was still parked in the parking lot, and they thought maybe I was on the phone with my girlfriend or something. Instead, they found me laying stomach down in the parking lot, and it was now raining. It was so weird, but I remember someone asking me if I was okay and telling me everything would be all right, right as my friends were helping me out. It wasn't them talking because I could hear their voices. This was a different voice from them, more of an internal and or maybe telepathic voice. So they took me inside and I was really out of it, kind of scared, really embarrassed, and overall didn't know what to say. All in all, I had been outside for 2 hours, but the time felt so much different to me. In ways, it felt like weeks had gone by, while in others, it felt like maybe just 5 minutes had gone. I couldn't tell. While this experience is ingrained into my mind, it's so hard to actually articulate in any real sense. It was just too much to take in and make semblance of, while also kind of being reminded of feelings and truths you have always known but are typically forgotten or masked. I don't do drugs or anything like that. and I had only had a couple of beers earlier that evening while on the lake. So in 2009, that was like being guided through the very essence of life while simultaneously wandering the universe and looking at very realistic galactic planets. I don't know if it was aliens that caused this, but it was an unbelievable experience that has had both positive and negative weight that has carried me to this day and changed me permanently. It's interesting because it could have been alien abduction, or it could have been more of a spiritual experience, and the voice you heard telling you everything was going to be okay could have been guardian angels or, something else other than alien. But, it's kind of hard to say what it was. But incredible, certainly life changing experience, I would imagine. The Nordic visitors. I've only told a few people about this experience because I got ridiculed from some family members that I respect. So I kind of shut up, about this for many years after. I was around 5 years old when it happened. Probably it was in the 1962s. The bedroom window, bedroom I shared with two brothers, faced a circle shaped park in front of our house. There was a one-way street around the park. We could always tell if an ambulance, police car, rescue squad, or fire truck was coming by the sound and type of lights the vehicle made. The perimeter of the park was lined with palm trees. Later, in my childhood, the neighborhood kids and I would play many a baseball and football game there around that area. We'd mess with the bats that lived in the palms, a million stories about the fun we all had there, and so on. It was a great place to grow up. Linwood, California. Literally an all American city back then. At least that's what the welcome sign says. One night, I saw some lights I couldn't identify. The following is what I consciously remembered, though. I walked out on the porch to see what it was. I felt as though I was drawn to this. A short distance above the palm trees, I saw a circle metallic craft. It had windows along the front. I could clearly see several men and women manning the craft. They all looked really handsome. They were just beautiful looking. They looked like white humans, all dressed in blue kind of uniforms or something. Years later, I came to the conclusion that they were what's commonly known as Nordics, this type of alien beings. They were smiling at me in a very friendly and welcoming way. The craft was mostly silent, maybe there was a very low hum. There were red and blue lights emitting from the lower part of the craft. And the area where the people were sitting and a few were standing was very well lit. Although I was on my front porch, I felt they wanted me to come closer. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in my bottom bunk bed with the taste of strawberry ice cream in my mouth and a mild soreness in my groin area. Upon feeling my scrotum, I had only one testicle. I had two when I went to bed earlier that night. I swear on everything I hold dearly, this is a true event that happened to me. And I can't explain what exactly happened, but somebody performed some kind of surgery on me, and that's all I know. That's exactly what it sounds like. If your scrotum was missing, or one of your scrotums was missing, then that's what happened. Question is, what did they do with it? What was their plan? And it's kind of creepy because you said they were friendly and smiling, and then they did something like this that's clearly so incredibly invasive without your permission. Um, yeah, one can only wonder. A family abduction. I've known these family friends for years, and we've been on multiple trips together, and I trust them completely, and they are a completely normal family from LA that I would never ever picture exaggerating or making up these events. They have a daughter my age, late 20s now, and she was the first one to mention this encounter to me out of the blue when we were teenagers. She wasn't present when it happened and told me her parents are still super uncomfortable with what happened and don't talk about it with basically anyone. But I'm pretty nosy and really interested in this stuff, so I decided to bring it up one night at dinner with our families. It was clear that they both became incredibly uncomfortable and weren't sure how to tell the story without seeming insane. It was like they were reluctant to say anything about it at all, even to family friends of over 20 years. They were driving late at night through Arizona back to California from some sort of road trip, apparently. They were kind of isolated, but also not crazy far from a town. While they were in the car, they both witnessed the classic triangle formation of three bright lights. They at first thought that it was a plane and became concerned, thinking it was flying way too low to the ground. They continued on with this thing ahead of them until Dad decided to stop, get out of the car, and actually try to figure out what was going on. The last thing both of them remember is stepping out of that car. Very early the next morning, they woke up in a motel about 20 minutes from where they had stopped the car. Their car was in the parking lot. Their suitcases were open and their clothes were folded into the drawers. They obviously freaked out and were incredibly confused. The dad went to the lobby and basically asked the front desk attendant what had happened or how or when they checked in. The attendant was still on his overnight shift and was actually the same guy who checked them in. He was obviously confused as to why the dad was asking all of this and then became concerned, asking if there was something wrong and so on. But they decided to check out and leave as soon as they were told about the previous night. The attendant had said to them that they had checked in during the middle of the night, that everything was completely fine, and that they had paid with their credit card that was still on file for incidentals. My next question would have been to see security footage of them checking in, but they just decided to leave, and it seems like the situation was barely talked about. Like, they were both so upset, but also just needed to let it be and forget it. I understand this next part seems nuts, but I have actually witnessed this part myself. Apparently, about a week later, the dad was getting his hair cut, and the stylist asked what happened to the back of his ear. He had a straight line scar that was slightly reddened and was obviously new. I saw the scar myself, and at present, it was just a white line like a normal old scar. That's where the story ended. Again, this isn't my story, so I can't argue for how true it is. All I can reiterate is that these are probably the last two people I would expect to have a story like this. I also have to say that I was actually taken aback by both of their reactions when I brought this up. It was like all of a sudden this funny, outgoing couple became so serious, quiet, fearful, embarrassed, and scared just telling the story. At one point, I thought the mom was going to start crying. The biggest reason I felt comfortable asking about it in the first place was because of their usual, very light-hearted, easygoing selves. After that night, the story was never brought up again, and I never heard any more information about it. It was clear that these two just wanted to avoid these memories at all costs and move on with their lives, even if they still have no idea what happened. This is a great story. I mean, it has all the hallmarks of a classic abduction story, especially with the little incision behind the ear, and so on. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing, but really so traumatic for people who go through this. It really is.